television, for example, you see how it's kind of grainy, black and white. It's night vision, infrared, whatever.
Digital, inhuman.
Exactly. So these people that you see being blown to bits, you don't really see them as people because you don't see them in the flesh.
Yep.
They were talking about how you and I see that when we watch it on TV.
Joe Rogan said this?
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Teach me.
Yeah, and but I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's not just you and I that see that image. I'm sure that the same image that we're seeing on TV, these inhuman-looking images of people, that's the same way that the pilots, the remote control pilots, see them as well. The same vision that we're getting, that we're getting of them.
They try.
They try what?
They try to condition these warriors and these military personnel to not feel like they're murdering.
Right. Well, yeah. And that's a big part of the whole joining.
But they still feel it.
Sure.
That's part of this growing suicide rate.
Right.
And what's crazy about it is it is the person on the other end of that trigger giving the go ahead or pulling the trigger, and they're still feeling what they're doing.
Well, that's why they're trying to eventually phase humans out of the equation altogether and make these autonomous weapons that can think for themselves and decide for themselves what targets to take out. How incredibly frightening
Dude,
is
it's
that?
like Terminator.
Yeah, man. Because Skynet. All over the place.
Well, Skynet exists.
I was just going to ask you if you knew that. If you look it up, they actually are naming that stuff freaking Skynet. How Orwellian. It's terrifying. It's frightening.
Yeah,
but it's funny at the same time, because you can't like funny in a sick kind of dark, morbid. If it was a comedy, it would be what would be considered a dark comedy. You know what I'm saying? Kind
Absolutely.
of sense, like almost one of those things where you just have no choice but to laugh because what else can you do besides cry?
Well, the concept behind making things inhuman, it started off as science fiction sounding, but is to take away the element of the remorse or the guilt or the compassion, and to uphold the law. So imagine when we do get to that place where a machine decides your fate. And doesn't have compassion, remorse, etc. You are in violation of the law. You ran a red light. That is first-degree attempt at murder. Subject executed. Wow. And it's not that far-fetched because the computer doesn't distinguish between a heinous action that could lead to someone's death and a heinous premeditation of an action that could lead to someone's death.
Right.
It's just upholding the program.
That's right.
Your turn.
And if mathematically, if you just break down every possible scenario, technically, if you really wanted to try to predict through a mathematical formula, maybe a computer simulation, you could eventually, if you worked on that problem long enough, come to the conclusion that this minor act could eventually lead to someone's death. Eventually you could do that, and that's what computers do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially now that they're working on these quantum computers that are far beyond anything that we have now, where the calculations are infinite and instant. Those are the conclusions that you would imagine they would naturally come to.
Yeah.
That every single minor crime could eventually lead to someone's death. So the only solution would be to kill you so that you don't cause that possible computer simulated scenario.
It's not far-fetched. Well, technically we're already there because, the big trend, and I know, again, it's not every single person out there, so don't get me wrong when I say stuff like this, but you have a lot of law enforcement people that are running around in fear, so they kill somebody in fear for their life, so that they don't get hurt. The person doesn't necessarily present an actual threat. It's just at that moment, in that person's mind, they're in fear for their life, like the guy who reached for his license. Well, it could be that he's reaching for a hand grenade, or it could be that he's reaching for his license. Let's kill him and not take the chance and find out. So we're already kind of at that stage. Now, imagine when you remove the human element, what is the robot going to do? I don't know.
And in regards to the police, I
shouldn't laugh. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. But like I said, it's one of those things that
it's amusing to think of, but no, it's actually scary.
Yeah, it's scary. It's frightening, and it's sad. But as far as the police, like you just mentioned, they have this conditioning of pull the trigger before something bad potentially happens to you. But I think it's a combination of that, just kind of knowing that subconsciously or maybe even consciously in the back of their minds, that conditioning that they have there to defend your life at all costs, but then on top of it, kind of also having the tendency to be trigger happy, and then also kind of knowing that at the end of the day you're going to get away with it because you're going to have.
Therein lies the problem.
Right.
I think you touched on an interesting subject. I don't even know what the subject for today's show is.
Well, the title of today's show is News, Libertarianism, and Obama. So I definitely want to touch on a lot of things Obama this evening, but we'll get to that. It's
Who dat?
Who that be? But yeah.
IGGY. That's short for ignoramus. You can call me Iggy.
Iggy. Anyway, I will call you Iggy for the rest of the show.
Yeah, so, the people that walk around in that state of mind, you're in the wrong business. You cannot give weapons to children. And when you're in that state of mind where everything is a threat, or you've watched Rambo one too many times, or you want to be, the Terminator, you really have no business in law enforcement.
Right.
The original concept of law enforcement was to uphold policies and protect
here's
people.
my thing. Here's my thing. I think, and I could be completely wrong with that, about that. And if I am wrong, if there's any possible law enforcement that's listening to the show that has an opposing view,
and there is,
I'd love for you to call in or email, whatever, and let us know. I'd love to have a discussion with you. Maybe a debate on air. Not so much a debate, but just a discussion on air. Maybe it would be a great idea to let other people hear your side of the argument. So you can reach us actually live. If you call into the show, the number is 754-999-0468. Again, the number to call into the show is 754-999-0468. I'd love to hear from law enforcement, just kind of get an opposing view, if there is any, or if you agree with us. Let's know as well.
Or your 2 cents. Absolutely.
Just your 2 cents, even still. If you're listening live, you can also click on the I Am Instant Message tab for Spreaker, and you can instant message there if you want to chat that way, or you can shoot us an email, arkansas41@gmail.com. That's arkansas41@gmail.com. Also, we have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Freedom Talk Now. Twitter page, since while we're at it. Follow us on Twitter at Talk Free Podcast. So there's plenty of ways to get in touch with us because we love to hear from you. I already covered that. Arkansas41@gmail.com. Try to keep up.
Oh, man.
Come on, Iggy.
I'm slow. IGGY.
IGGY.
Ignoramus.
But yeah, so the point that I was making, though, is that I'm starting to come to the conclusion more and more that with the combination of the militarization of the police force and the fact that part of their training is, I believe, to know that no matter what happens, they'll have cover.
Get away with.
They'll get away with it. They'll be covered. Their butts will be covered by their fellow boys in blue, by the higher ups, the chief of police and the sheriff and whatever this, that, and the other.
We're going to investigate ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And find that we've done nothing wrong.
Right, exactly. The foxes are guarding the hen house, and I think that every time that they pull the trigger, more and more often, that officer is pulling the trigger is thinking in the back of his mind, I'm good. I'm okay. I don't have anything to worry about it. I don't have anything to worry about. Look at this 12-year-old kid that was shot. The African American kid who was shot, 12 years old, was apparently had a fake gun or a BB gun, something like that. Shot, just died today.
Yeah, why did they shoot him?
Because he had supposedly he had allegedly he had a gun of some kind. I don't know. I don't know the whole story. I just know that he had a fake gun of some kind. Whether it was a BB gun or a toy gun, I'm not sure.
I'm so curious as to whether he was flashing it. Like, if anybody knows the whole story, that's also, feel free to call in it and give us what.
Right. Yeah. Let us know. Absolutely. I'd like to know some more about that because I only have so much time in the day to read all these different articles.
It's such a double-edged sword, and you'll always hear me make that statement because.
I'm sorry. Well, I know where you're going to go with that, and my thing is this, because it kind of leads into what the next thing I was going to say was that not only the training and knowing that they're okay.
Now? I fear for my life.
Not yet.
Right.
Not yet. I'm working on it. and that's the thing is that okay. First of all,
I just attack you anyway, so you don't hurt me ever.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I like that.
I'm winking. Did y'all hear that? Blink, blink.
Ding. Well, we should have a ding sign for every time you wink.
I like that.
Right?
Or crickets.
I have it all set up. I'm waiting for the proper moment. But yeah, so my point is that they have this training to shoot first, ask question later, shoot in defense of your life regardless of any given situation. And even if I shoot someone who's innocent and I make a bad judgment call, it's okay. I'm covered. I know I'm going to be all right regardless. Now, here's my thing. Let's say, devil's advocate, that they genuinely were in fear of their lives because this person pulled something that looked like a gun. Maybe it was a toy gun. Maybe it was a toy gun that looked so realistic that they were justified, in air quotes, in pulling the trigger because they were in fear of their lives. Well, here's the thing. The police over the last 10, 15, 20 years have been given dozens and dozens of different type of weapons that are non-lethal.
Yeah, you're right.
You see what I'm saying? So it's hard for me more and more to accept an excuse for using deadly force in a lot of these situations that you see here. When it's not, first of all, you got a 12-year-old kid. That's a kid. That's a little kid.
Yeah.
That's something that should be taken into consideration. The odds are that's probably a toy gun because, yes, it's relatively easy to get your hands on a real gun, but it's a little bit harder for a 12-year-old kid to get. Even if they're black, it's still a little bit harder. I know that's hard to believe for a lot of people out there who are of the fairer skin persuasion, but it's hard, just as hard for a 12-year-old. It's just hard for a 12-year-old brown kid to get a gun as it is for a 12-year-old white kid. So these things have to be taken into consideration. Bet you more white kids have guns than black. Right? Yeah, yeah, I believe it. And but I think that more often than not, a lot of times these situations can be diffused with non-lethal force, whether it's a
beanbag gun,
taser, freaking plastic pellet guns, yeah, the tasers, the
hand grenades.
Come on, man, it's just
not hand grenades.
Well, maybe flashbangs. I can accept a flashbang, I can, but it just seems less and less necessary, given the technology that we have. Bow flare. A swift drop kick through the throat. I mean, come on.
Pile driver. Yeah, everything. This is why it makes it so hard to argue with you. But I do take the different angles. Like, I do want to know why, like, the justification was there to do that. But you make a very valid point. There's so many non-lethal ways to deal with somebody. And I'm going to rewind way back in the days. Police confrontations with an armed suspect very rarely ended with a killing. And this is, right. I'm 40 years old for anybody listening. If you're 20, let's take it back. And I want you guys to understand my day. People with psychological problems, the cops did not want to kill them. And let me tell you, the incidence of policemen dying in the line of duty was so rare.
Right.
When they would not pull the trigger. It was just rare. Cops were not dying left and right. Now, the instances where policemen were dying was instances where they were personally not using precaution and throwing caution to the wind. For example, turning their back on somebody and then that person drawing a gun and shooting them in the back, or a good wrestling match where they were unprepared. They should have been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which if we plugged Team Alpha in Miami, go join them now. Just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding. But you've got so many things that you prepare for, that murdering somebody is not necessarily the right answer. So the people that died in the line of duty were oftentimes killed in such a manner that no matter what, they were going to die anyway because the person intended to murder them with full intentions of killing them in a very secretive way, like a non-threatening, like, hey, my hands are up, you've got me, I'm going to turn around, and then boom, wrestling match. The policemen were not prepared for that wrestling match. They were overpowered. We've seen all this stuff. We know how it ends. But on the other hand, the answer to those problems is not to kill people because you're in fear for your life. That it's completely the opposite. Imagine if every single citizen was allowed to do the same thing.
Right.
Where would we be as a society?
Right.
And I do have a problem with law enforcement doing this at the rate that it's happening now, because why do you become a special privileged human being the minute you're sworn in to office? Why are you better than the people you proclaim to serve?
Right.
And I do have a problem with that. So I'm going to take it back to the way it was, where you weren't killing people. These guys were drawing guns. They had guns out. They had hostages, and cops were not killing them left and right. They were using tact, psychology, getting into their heads, talking them down. And oftentimes, more often than not, these criminals were laying the gun on the ground, and the cops had a chance to bum rush them and then put the knees to the back of the throat and pistol whip them multiple times. But the guy didn't die. I can understand that. You just aimed a gun at me. I didn't kill you. Yeah, I'm a little bit anxious to get my knee into the back of your neck too. But it was a totally different world back then. Right. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes a lot to the training. And I think it's a combination of the training, but also,